I am joined by Adam Holz from Plugged In. Hello, Adam.
How are you doing today, Andy?
I am not doing too bad. I've had a couple of impromptu satellite meetings at my satellite location, otherwise known as a camping chair in the garden.
Okay. I was going to say it's not on a satellite,
No,
probably.
just like
No.
satellite locations. Everyone's got satellite locations now, so I had
It's
my
true.
satellite office today under the
I
tree
love
in the
that.
garden.
Yeah, I have thought about just walking down to the ocean and seeing if I can start taking meetings down there. But the two problems are A, the ocean is super loud,
Yes.
and B, it's really sunny, so I can't see my screen very well. So I'm not sure it's a particularly workable strategy, but maybe I'll figure it out.
We talk about media. So this is relevant. I remember watching a video. I really hope it's not AI because I don't think AI existed. It could be clever CGI, but it was a guy who had a green screen. I think he was skiing, and it
Uh-huh.
popped off as he was skiing, and everyone thought he's bopping around a bit, but maybe it's breezy where he is on a meeting, working from home, skiing. I love it.
Love it. Love it.
Ingenuity, but this is using technology for fun stuff.
Yes. Yes.
Right. What's in the world of media, films, music, books, and more?
So, well, let me ask you a question, and you may not immediately know the answer. Are you familiar with Dude Perfect? Does that
No,
ring any bells for
not a clue.
you? I wonder if this is even being released over there. But I'm going to just toss it out there anyway because it's something y'all can look up, even if it's not. So, there's a website, excuse me, there is a YouTube channel called Dude Perfect. It's five Christian guys who have been doing it for 16 years. They have 65 million followers on
Wow.
YouTube. So that's approximately 64,998,000 more than I have. And they do what might best be summarized with the word trick shotting. They just do fun, sort of goofy adolescent ish fun little trick things. Like they'll go up on the top of a 10-story building and they will shoot a basketball and try to make the shot from, number of stories up. And they'll do stuff with Nerf guns and darts, and some of it's in slow motion. And they just make these incredible trick shots, and they have these sort of regular competitions. Well, they just fairly recently took it on tour across the United States and they filmed it. So there's now a movie, Dude Perfect, the Hero Tour, giving people a chance to sort of experience some of this, live. But if you couldn't experience it live, you can now watch the movie version. Um, and it's in theaters here. I don't know if it's there, but even if it's not there, Dude Perfect, I think, is one of the premier YouTube channels and brands made by people who are Christian and who are unapologetic about their connection with Jesus, but they're also unapologetic about mostly just having fun. Like you watch them and you think, oh man, these guys really know how to have fun. And they've parlayed it into 65 million followers, which is that's no small thing,
No.
right? I'm guessing that they drive better cars than my 2007 Honda with 240,000 miles on it. So, not that I'm jealous or comparing or anything like that. I'm still trying to be the social media phenomena I know in my heart that I can be. But anyway, it's fun. It's just they have so much fun and a little bit of bathroom humor, as you would expect, because their audience is like 13 and 14-year-old boys, largely.
And perhaps a nearly 50-year-old man sometimes because that's the kind of thing I can quite happily watch.
Yes. Yeah. And it's, you and I were talking before we got on about the political realities of the day. And boy, there's a lot that can bring us down, right? From the truly tragic stuff like Charlie Kirk, which we talked about last week, to just the run of the mill downers in the news. That's a long list. And I think sometimes we do just need something that is light and fun and makes us laugh and makes us say, no way. I can't even believe they did that, right? And let me also say, we are often a little bit down on social media. Obviously, there's a lot of research that suggests that too much social media is bad for our mental health. But let me just play devil's advocate for a moment. I think part of the reason we get on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or wherever we're at and watch short form videos is because we just want a break, right? We just want something a little bit silly that is fun, that makes us laugh. And I think that we can use social media in that way, just for an escape that's not something we need to feel guilty about. But the problem with it, of course, is the algorithm, right? It watches us and it wants us to stay invested as long as it can get us to stay there. And so that's where it gets problematic because, a little bit of cotton candy is a good thing, but a constant diet of it probably isn't going to be nutritious for us.
I like the sound of that. I see laughter. Laughter is it's so important. When I went for heart surgery last year, and a friend of mine who's an internationally famous comedian, he's passed away last year. But one of his pieces of advice as I went into surgery was, Andy, you've got to find a reason to laugh about your heart surgery. Now, I was terrified. He knew where I was at. He'd battled cancer for a year, really serious. Eventually, it won over him, and he went to be with Jesus. But you've got to find reasons to laugh. So I went through some music in the build up to the heart surgery on my show, and I ended up with Bon Jovi. And it's You Give Love a Bad Name. But the very first line I play to make myself laugh. Shot to the heart. Why? Well, because I had basically burned heart as surgery. So we can find reasons, but I now hear that song randomly and think, it made me laugh.
So I don't know that we've ever talked about this, and this is a completely sideways running off the path through the forest into the trees as far as we can go. I'm a lifetime Bon Jovi fan. And it hasn't gone well for poor John's voice the last few years, but I've seen him, I think, 11 times in the last 30 years. So anyway, Bon Jovi's like my love language, and people look at me like, clearly I need to get therapy or something. But anyway, I have been shot through the heart many times by Bon Jovi.
Yep. Oh, perhaps they need a therapy. They're all wrong. You're all wrong,
Yep.
Right, where else can we go?
Well, let's talk about a fun show called Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy Pieces of the Past.
Nice and short.
Yeah, exactly. What a crazy title. This is on Disney Plus, and heaven knows that Star Wars hasn't given us much to cheer about in the live action department, with the possible exception of Andor the last few years. Andor is actually pretty remarkable, but that's another conversation for another time. This is a Lego Star Wars show in which they sort of re-envision the Star Wars universe, and there is a guy who sort of hits the reset button on the entire universe. And so you have a lot of the same characters. You have good versus evil. You've got Darth this and Luke that, but you have a whole bunch of new characters as well, trying to put the pieces back together quite literally. So this is a fun show. It's you can laugh at it. There are so many little sly winks and nods to true Star Wars fans, and it makes me sad and yet at the same time happy that it takes the folks at Lego Star Wars to remind us why we liked this thing in the first place. But it's a super fun Star Wars series on Disney Plus, and again, kind of worth checking out if you need something light and fun. And of course, you got to deal with the Force, and there's some wonky spiritual stuff in Star Wars. I have to give that disclaimer, but I think it's pretty navigable.
I am a big fan of Lego movies. So the Lego movie, brilliant. I love the fact that at some point we had Lego Batman. We have Bruce Willis.
Darkness.
I know.
No parents.
That's the one. I only work in black or really dark grey. And you got Bruce Willis with a cigarette lighter in an air duct. And it was, the cameos were, and it was just legendary. And then we started watching Lego Star Wars, which of course little short things.
Yeah.
Absolutely fell in love with them. I
So
loved
funny.
how they brought humanity and compassion to Star Wars creatures, because it's silly and it's Lego, but they just brought some of the stuff alive.
Yeah, and it's, as much as we lament what feels like the death of creativity in Hollywood, because we get these mindless sequels and we get stuff that was clearly made by some sort of a committee that couldn't decide which direction they wanted to go. There are things like this that are just diamonds that are not necessarily on the surface, right? And they're so enjoyable. I love the scene in it. I don't even remember which Lego Star Wars show it was in, with Darth Maul. And Darth Maul comes in with, like a 14 blade lightsaber, and he spins it, and the music is playing, and he's like, awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. And it's funny because they're taking something. It's great satire, right? Good satire takes an element from the thing it's sort of mocking, and it amplifies it and it makes it funny, but it also respects the original source material. And I think the Lego Star Wars stuff, both the shows and the video games, do that really well.
I like the fact that on the Death Star, they're building another Death Star with Lego with packets. They have to rip open the packets, and there's the two Darth people there are creating it with the Force. And I just that blending of building the Lego box that arrives, and they open the packets, and there's all the pieces, and they're all. It's an absolute perfect blending of comedy, honoring the very initial thing of what happened with Star Wars, plus the Lego. And I don't know, there's something about Lego. They just brought stuff alive again. It's brilliant.
Absolutely.
Big fan. Right, let's go to one more. What else can we look at?
Well, I wrote a blog this week that I quite like, but I'm partial. And it's addressing the question, why are teens so lonely? And there's just a ton of research that shows today's teenagers report being more lonely than any other generation. And there is the obvious culprit is social media. And the paradox of social media is that here we have a technology that theoretically makes it easier for us to connect with people. But the reality is it is also enabled a kind of disconnect, because the connection we end up having too often is superficial, or it's just people who think exactly like we do. And what ends up lacking, and is especially lacking for a lot of teenagers today, is that face-to-face interaction. At least here in the United States, the percentage of kids getting their driver's licenses when they turn 16 has fallen off a cliff. They don't even bother anymore because A, mom and dad are driving them around everywhere anyway, and B, they're on social media. So why would they need their driver's license, right? And so it's a strange sort of unintended consequence. Social scientists think, related to social media. And I'm free associating a little bit, but our kids today are growing up with tons of online time, but that comes at the expense of being face-to-face with kids and just being out in the world doing things, right? When you and I were growing up, what did we do? We went and got on our bicycle, and we rode around, and I had a paper route, and we would go to the swimming pool, and we lived, especially in the summers, and I would leave the house at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I wouldn't get home until 9 o'clock at night. Nobody worried about where I was. Now, of course, I don't want to be the, when I was your age guy. I'm not saying that we're ever going to go back there. But the reality is we had those relational connections. We had face-to-face time. We were doing things with other kids. And that has really slowly atrophied in our tech-based culture, because kids don't feel the need to get together, and their social anxiety means sometimes they're afraid to leave the house. It's a dangerous world out there. We want to stay with the hatches battened down in here, and when we leave, we're going to have mom and dad shuttle us around, and mom and dad are tired of driving because it's all we do, it feels like. So I just sort of unpack some of those things and gently suggest the more that we as parents can facilitate face-to-face time for our kids, and not just play dates, but even just, let your kids take some appropriate risks. Let them go out and explore and have that developmental time. I mentioned that I had 2 horrible bike accidents when I was 14. 14 was a terrible year. 2 bicycle accidents. Both times strangers saw it happen, stopped their cars, picked me up, and took me to the hospital. It wasn't pleasant, but it was fine. It worked out. And I think we're so afraid of the world today in so many ways that, we think, oh, I can't let my kids out because, what if something bad happens to them? Like, well, what if they get heart disease because they haven't been off the couch for 15 years? I mean, there's risk in everything, right? Now I really am opining like an angry old man, but, build those relationships, let your kids be kids, encourage them to get outside, encourage them to have face-to-face time because they desperately need it with their friends.
I think that conjures up a whole bunch of stuff. The one thing that completely shook me was people in America, the young people, they're not taking the driving license, which for me, looking at the US, I just think, well, you need cars because it's massive. Anybody I know who's been to the States, you don't walk anywhere. Well, why don't you walk there? Because it's too far. It was a corner shop. It's a 10-minute drive.
Right.
That seems crazy. But that's fine. But that then necessitates cars and vehicles and the ability to move yourself. So I just find that bizarre.
Yeah. No, and it is bizarre. I mean, when I was your age, when I was growing up, I got my permit so you can start driving with your parents. And I was in Iowa, which was, a rural agricultural state. I got my permit the day that I turned 14. I got my driver's license the day that I turned 16. I was not going to wait 1 second. And why? Because you're being able to drive was that first step toward independence. And you had to drive anywhere to connect with anybody. But now with the advent of social media, kids don't have much of a felt need to, they don't need the driver's license to connect with their friends because they're doing it online. And it doesn't mean that all online connection is bad, but again, it's not the same. If you and I were having this conversation face to face in the same room, as opposed to over the ocean and, with the help of satellites and whatnot, it's different. Being present is different than doing things digitally.
And I guess to try and bring us back to what we talk about, the idea of outside bad, inside good.
Yeah.
Yes, to a degree, it's a bit safer in the house, generally speaking. You can't be hit by a bus. But now we're bringing dangers in because people, and this has been said, kids are bringing their phones home.
Oh, yeah.
Any bullying, and this is just one example, any bullying now isn't just at the school playground or out on the streets.
Right.
Now it's in their bedroom where they're trying to go to sleep. And of course, they don't turn the phones off because how do you do that anymore? Because it takes 20 minutes to turn on in the morning. So now the danger that's out there is actually just in here. We're not talking any sort of silly, nasty images. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about normal people from the school, the peers in their class at school. Now that's going on into the bedroom where they live.
Yep.
And we think they're safe, therefore we put our guard down. But actually, you can see or hear anything. And again, I'm not talking about pornography or looking at bad. I'm just talking about normal conversation with someone who's
normal
just nasty.
Stuff. Yeah. And the reality is, our kids are probably going to be exposed to things that we would never want them to see, not because they're bad kids and not because we're bad parents, but because that is the world that we're living in.
Yeah.
Right. And we have got to be building a relationship with them that involves an ongoing conversation, because it's that conversation that equips them to know how to respond in the moment. And to know what to do when they find themselves in a situation where it's like, oh, well, should I be looking at this? Should I be doing this? We live in a relatively affluent part of California. And, kids have access to a lot of stuff. And some of it's not good. And so, I had a conversation with my daughters the other day. I'm like, if you ever find yourself somewhere and you think, this is not good, I should not be here, you call me and I will come get you, no questions asked, right? But the world today that our kids are growing up in is a different one than the one we grew up in, unfortunately. I feel like we grew up at the last good time, God bless Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, right? It's all been downhill since then. But anyway, I digress, and I will try not to sound like a cranky old man anymore. But you can check out my article about why kids are lonely and how can we respond at pluggedin.com on our blog.
Adam, as ever, it's a pleasure. I think we could talk for a very, very long time of two
I
angry
think
old
so
men
too.
podcast. Let's not
Yep,
do that.
I
Let's
think
stick to
so
this.
too.
Have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, Andy.